Hey, y'all, welcome back to a Friday, September 13th, 2024 edition here on the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Pod Divided with fellow University of North Georgia alumni Matt Green is on the show today in our twice-a-week college football show, where a Georgia and Tennessee fan and analyst talk about all things college football, along with a deep dive into our teams, the Tennessee Volunteers and the Georgia Bulldogs. So we talk about a lot of Tennessee and Georgia stuff. We talk about the Pac-12 also being back potentially here, Pac-2 going to Pac-6, and who else might be joining the fold here in the Pac-12 over the next maybe months, couple of years, whatever it is, up until 2026 when it's all back together again for the Oregon State Beavers and the Washington State Cougars. We also talk about our Week 3 picks and predictions. We get into what's quietly a pretty great slate here. You get Arizona and Kansas State on Friday, Bama at Wisconsin, South Carolina hosting LSU, Memphis traveling to Florida State, and what's going to be now a big-time game for the Noles to avoid a 0-3 start, Georgia at Kentucky, Notre Dame at Purdue, which could be pretty interesting, Florida and A&M, the ultimate toss-up game, and all that and more coming up here with Matt Green on our twice-a-week college football show here on the Chase Thomas Podcast. Don't forget, folks, you can watch us on YouTube, youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Well over 2,100 subs and growing more and more each and every day on our YouTube channel. So if you want to watch this very show, you can do so over there on the YouTube channel. Full episodes, clips, shorts, all the good stuff over there, youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. You can also listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or however you get your podcast. If you are listening on the audio format and you have not already done so, and you're a fan of this program, make sure you hit that subscribe button first. And also, make sure you leave this show a 5-star rating and write us a review. It helps other people find the show, and it helps this very show continue to grow. So got another one this week on the Apple Podcast front, so we appreciate that. So every single review and rating helps as we continue to grow more and more each and every day. So if you could take care of that today, I would greatly appreciate it. You can learn more about the show at chasethomaspodcast.com, previous episodes and everything we've got cooking here with Knoxville's #1 Tennessee Vols podcast over there at chasethomaspodcast.com. You can also read me and all of my columns and all of my Tennessee Vols sports coverage over there at the Players Lounge Tennessee. So if you want to read me, in addition to all the podcasts and everything we got cooking here every single day, you can do so over there at TPL Tennessee. All right, Uncle Darren.
The Chase Thomas Podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, we're back here on the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me down there in Decatur, Georgia, my good friend and fellow University of North Georgia alumni, Matt Green, is here. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. It is good to be back with you, talking college football like we do every week. And I'm not an NFL guy, and I'm specifically not an NFL on Thursday kind of guy. But I know you've been peeping this Bills-Dolphins game. Chase Thomas over here trying to set a narrative that Georgia players can't play in the NFL or something. James Cook's going off, sir. James Cook's having himself a day. 3 touchdowns for the Bills. So I don't know. You're trying to act like Kirby's guys can't make it and can't cut it in the league.
I was talking mostly defense because George Pickens was a problem for my Atlanta Falcons on Sunday in what was one of the more miserable football games I have sat through at a sports bar for 3.5 hours, just taking my notes and solemnly drooping my head more and more to the table as the game wore on. And it was very clear that Kirk Cousins is, speaking of James Cook, cooked as a 35-year-old coming off a torn
George
Achilles.
Pickens is my new Stafford. Stafford was the guy I would just pound on the table about. Like, you guys don't understand. This guy is a legit franchise quarterback. His team has just been so bad for so long. This guy's the real deal. First year he gets on a legit team, wins a Super Bowl. Also, I saw a stat, only 3 active quarterbacks have Super Bowls right now. It's kind of like college football. Only like 3 active coaches have championships right now. But
Interesting.
but it's like George Pickens is the guy who I'm just like, I know this dude is a baller. You look at his career, it's like he was his freshman year in college is like his best year, and then it's like he had, bad Stetson Bennett as a sophomore and DeJuan Mathis and whatever as a sophomore. And then he missed his whole junior year. So he doesn't have the college production to back it up. And I'm like, I see the guy. He is a legit number one wide receiver. Then he has, what's his name? Kenny Pickett for 2 years. I'm like, I'm telling you, this guy is legit. He just can't get a consistent QB. And now he's got Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. So who knows? But yeah, he put on a show versus Atlanta. But I feel you can just tell Pickens is the guy. He just he's never had the production to match it. I think he had a 1,000-yard season last year, but like nothing incredible compared to what, the Jamar Chases of the world have done earlier in their career.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, James Cook, he's kind of going to be like a forgotten dog though to me. Like do Georgia fans have, I mean, it's still pretty recent, but I just wonder in like 5 years.
Forgotten dog, sir. What do you mean? He's part of the national championship team.
You don't think James Cook, though? I think it's one of those where you struggle to remember 5 to 7 years from now who the running back was. I think
why? That's because Georgia's a team. We're not about stars. We're about the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and the sum of the parts is damn good on its own. But no, he had moments like that Tennessee game and it was really his senior year. I think James Cook. I think it's kind of revisionist history, but there's a huge section of Georgia fans that always felt like James Cook was misused, that he should have been getting touches like his whole career. And then it's like his senior year, like, see, this is what he would have done his whole career. Because, I mean, he had like an 900-yard rush season and like a 600-yard receiving season, something like that, like a good all-purpose yards type year, if I'm remembering correctly. But he had the moments, like he took over that Tennessee game in Knoxville that year, like the semifinal versus Michigan, he balled out. And then that long run he had in the Alabama in the national championship game was like one of the turning points in that game in the second half. So James Cook definitely has like moments that people consider him an all-time. And if you're on that 2021 team, like you're going to be remembered as an all-time great dog, honestly.
Yeah, look, I'm not a Dogs fan, obviously. I just wonder if he gets kind of, because I mean, he's kind of squashed in between some great backs. I think Nate Frazier is going to be the next great Georgia back. You have obviously the Chubb era, the Gurley era, obviously DeAndre Swift, and there's just certain guys that I think Georgia fans are going to remember more. And I think from those title teams and just that era, it's just the defense and all the guys who got drafted. Stetson, obviously, Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington. I don't know. To me, I think Kenny McIntosh did not. He was fine for Georgia, but like McIntosh, Cook, I don't know. I just think they're going to kind of be like harder to remember. Be like, wait, who was our running backs? Who was our?
I think McIntosh kind of had more of a feature back season in 2022 than Cook ever really had. But that's a good point in terms of the RBU lineage, like the Noshans and the Gurleys and Chubb and Sony Michel, like and Swift, like. I think all those guys are kind of remembered higher than James Cook, but there's a chance like next to, I mean, I guess Chubb has been really good in the NFL too. So it's not necessarily, he might not have the success of Gurley and Chubb, but outside of that, I mean, he could be one of the most successful ones at the next level.
Yeah.
And I mean, that they always said that was by design. Like he wanted to go somewhere that kind of saved his carries, be part of like a duo by committee. And that's saved his legs for the next level. Maybe his mom saw what kind of happened to Dalvin Cook, and some of his best years, were at Florida State in college.
For sure. Well, Matt Green, before we dive into our Tennessee and Georgia section here to get into our week 3 college football picks, because we're already nearing the 4th of the way through the regular season here, Matt Green. We wait forever, and then it's here and it's moving in a hurry, sir. But
don't talk like that, sir. Don't even talk like that. We're just gonna enjoy it week by week.
Absolutely. Well, Matt Green, feeling like fall this week. It's been nice. I'm wearing my home field sweater. It's very cozy. It's feeling very fall-y outside, so I'm a fan of that for sure here in East Tennessee. But I think where I want to start here, Matt Green, is the Pac-12, which I think a lot of people are overthinking this in terms of just reading a lot of the responses of oh, it's a nothing burger, or they are yawning or making fun of the Pac-2 and expansion into the Mountain West and bringing in some of these big dogs. But I'm like, this is nice. You know what? This is just a good day because the Pac-12 is not going away. It made me sad that the Pac-12 is going away. I understand it's going to be a little bit different, but the Big 12 is obviously different. And the Big 12 is really fun this year. And the Pac-12, I think, is going to follow something similar. It's also let it play out. We don't know how this is ultimately going to go. We saw Pete Nakos have a full list outlining who the potential targets are going to be, and I'm sure more will pop up here. But I think this is a net win because we didn't really know what Oregon State and Washington State were going to do, and people have joked about America's team, but honestly, they've been left out, and it's just, I felt like obviously the Oregon State fan base is great, and these two schools, we grew up just really enjoying the Oregon State, Washington State lineage, and just Corvallis and Pullman, and really strong diehard fans, and it just was crappy the way this all unfolded for them, left behind this past 2 years. So to see this week that it happened very quickly, like it's just kind of wild where you see these late reports and you're like, oh, the Pac-12's back, and they're adding Fresno, Colorado State, Boise, and it was, who am I forget? Oh, San Diego State. And it's to 6. You need 8 to maintain their status or whatever it is. So they got to get at least 2 more. Cal Stanford will be a little bit more complicated from what I've read with the ACC, and if would the ACC maybe let them back? Is there a way to get back? Because they only left because of the fall of the Pac-12, and they just had to jump on some kind of life raft before being left behind. I hope the conference and the schools would be able to come to some sort of agreement to let Cal and Stanford go back to the Pac-12. UTSA is mentioned, obviously, for that market, and this is from the Pete Nakos article. Memphis is the first one, which is interesting. Tulane, UTSA, Cal and Stanford, like I mentioned. UNLV, which I think I'd probably put UNLV in as a lock just with where everything's going with Vegas. It just feels like that's a logical one. They've had the Mountain West Championship.
There's some sort of deal with you can't take UNLV without Nevada, or Nevada, so. I should say. So there's some sort of deal with that. I'm not exactly sure the details, but
wait, are you saying there is?
Yeah, there's some sort of deal of like you can't take UNLV without Nevada. Like I don't know if it's like a political thing or something like that. But yeah, apparently there's some sort of deal with that because UNLV most people think is like a no-brainer. Like they should have been one of the in this first group to take to this conference. But what does it mean to you? Because like, do you just like the Pac-12 branding better than the Mountain West? Yeah. Because it's like where these teams are going to be located, Mountain West would be a way better description, right? Like,
well, it depends. Like if you get Cal, Stanford back, San Diego State, Fresno. I mean, if you get it, I mean, it's half Pacific. Like
we're talking Memphis and Tulane.
Memphis is like, it gets a little. But you know what I said? I think
at least be west of the Mississippi, right? Memphis is like on the Mississippi.
Yes. I guess what I would say is, do you remember this summer what I pitched and what I think both conferences should really look at? If you're trying to get in all these markets, because you read the television markets, you're trying to get in all these windows. That's why you bring in Texas, that's why you bring in some central time zones, some east time zones. You want to be in all the different time zones, right? Like that's what these conferences and TV execs care about. I look at this where ACC's unhappy, the Pacific side's unhappy. Just do a combination, and you have the two sides where the East side plays the East Coast Conference, and then just merge the Pac-12, the ACC, and have a super conference there, and they stay in their regional spots for the majority of the year, and then the winners on both sides play each other in the championship game, and they maintain their Power 4 automatic berth, and that's just how it goes. Like that's what I would do if I was the leaders. I would get them in a room and be like, combine the Pac-12 and the ACC, because the ACC, if you're looking at this, you're like, Florida State and Clemson are still going to find their way out. Like, I just don't feel like this ends with them just staying in this conference for 15 years and the ACC making it work. So if you're worried about it, might as well just like join up and create your own super conference. It gets both time zones. There's a lot of good property still in the Pac-12, and you already brought in Cal and Stanford anyway. You can still pick and choose some of these other ones like Memphis and some of these other ones that are rising, a lot more money being invested in those programs. Tulane, former SEC powerhouse Tulane that you and I have cited here, they're rolling across the board. I don't know. I just
don't know where those teams are going to go. Like where are those, where are the ACC powerhouses, where are the UNCs and Clemson and FSU, like where are they going to go?
Well, I think it's a lot of posturing, right? Like right now, because the ACC and the Big Ten can both say like, oh well, we're good. But then it's like if it came down to it, if they really got out of the grant of rights, because it's all theoretical right now, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen with the grant of rights. The lawyers been looking at this for a long time, and they still have not found a way out. So it doesn't behoove the commissioners at the Power Two to flirt or talk about any, like, open the idea of Clemson or Miami or North Carolina, because they haven't been able to get out of it. So until it becomes real that there's a way out for these schools, I just feel like there's no good reason for there to be any public flirtation or any of those kind of sources to get out on that, because there's just, like, you need to play the waiting game. Like, I think you have to play the long game here. But do I believe that Miami or Florida State would not find their way into the SEC if they really got out of the ACC and it became available, or UNC or whatever? I think Sankey, it seems like to me he values properties, obviously, but he values the location. Like, he knows he's got the best location, but like, you're not in the Miami market, and like, it's a good private institution. They're rolling on right now at the football level, and I don't know. I just have a hard time believing, if that became real for schools like North Carolina, where you're not in that market, Virginia, you're not in that market, and it's still the South, that the SEC would not be like, all right, we'll add a couple more. I have a hard time believing that if it ever came open, but you just don't have to think about that yet, because they're still in it.
Yeah, and that's the only way Cal and Stanford like actually leave, because they're not making enough money to leave that ACC money. So it feels like once North Carolina and like Clemson or something, or Florida State, Miami or something, they start leaving, it'll be like if you're like a kid at a friend's house and they start arguing with their parents and storm out of the room or something, and it's like you're just sitting there, you're like, I guess I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna leave too. You know, it's like that. Then Cal and Stanford are open to be like, okay, we're just gonna go back to our house. We just live down the street. I can just walk right back. It's no big deal. Don't worry about me. But yeah, because Cal and Stanford only makes sense with these other teams. Like, I don't know. I'm just not a fan of this coast to coast conference. That might be what ends up happening, but I hope they can keep some sort of Western conference. Like, I mean, we had 6 right now, like with those teams starting in 2026, right? So I don't know. I hope they can do something on the West Coast. That was just my biggest bummer. I feel like when all this stuff happened, it's like we need a conference that just exists on the West Coast. Like, there's value in that.
I think the SEC is the only one who's going to hold the fort here in terms of because they don't have to. Part of it is just the best players are there, the best programs are there, the most amount of money. Like, they are operating at a position of strength. They don't have to do anything. They have the best TV deal. Like, they don't have to expand across the country, because they're functioning at an elite level in college baseball, college basketball, and college football in their own market. They could do their own league. Don't listen to these.
All the best teams available are in their footprint already.
Yeah.
With Florida State and Miami and Clemson.
Right.
Like, and obviously North Carolina is attractive for multiple sports, you know?
Yeah.
So I think Duke, North Carolina have to be a package, though. Like, Duke, North Carolina have to go together. Like, you can't split that up.
Like, if I had to make a prediction, I'm like, I think Virginia and North Carolina are, I would say Virginia. It's hard to say, because NC State, I don't know. It might be NC State, and Duke and North Carolina end up in the Big Ten. Like, I that wouldn't surprise me either. So,
NC State would feel like an A&M type jump.
Yeah.
Like, to separate themselves, they get in the SEC.
I could see it though. But we shall see, Matt Green. But either way, it's exciting for one reason. It's good for Oregon State and Washington State, because they are wanting the wilderness here, and I don't know what it means long term for them. I don't know if they're going to get an automatic berth, or it's going to be looked at as a G5 Pac-12. I'm not sure. It's too early to say how that works, because I think the playoff is going to change again in a couple of years, and this doesn't even start until 2026. So we have a lot to figure out.
Starting with those teams, like obviously Oregon State and Washington State weren't powerhouses at the Power 5 level, but they were still getting Power 5 players. You know, Oregon State was producing some NFL players. Like, you're at least getting like the Fresnos and San Diego State and Boise State, like the other G5s out there that are producing some NFL players. Like, I feel like it's, depending on who you add next, it could rival what the Big 12 has going on, just from like from a top to bottom type of conference.
I agree, because you could also get weird at Gonzaga in basketball. They're sitting out there. You could be a little aggressive in different ways. UConn flirting with Big 12, that's off for a little bit. Do you just go coast to coast and be like, UConn, what's up? And bring in them. But I mean, like you said, Tulane's rolling, Boise's rolling. You're getting some powerhouse programs right now who could be the G5 representative in the playoff this year, which would
maybe G5 powerhouses.
Yeah.
Yeah, mid-major powerhouses.
Tulane's rolling. Like, even post Willie Fraze, John Summerall's been a really good hire for them right out of the gate. So I don't know. We shall see. Matt Green. Dog bites. What do you have for us this week, Matt Green?
We're gonna get into Georgia. Talk Georgia, Kentucky.
Oh, is that all you had? Oh, we'll save that. I don't want to.
We're talking.
I'm not
Georgia,
starting
Kentucky
off with.
Week.
I thought you had something specific here. We're not diving into Georgia, Kentucky out of the gate. I can't do that.
One thing that's interesting is the injury report or the availability report that I guess they're required to put out now in the SEC. So interesting. Kirby Smart, he can't play coy anymore. I guess he's got to actually.
Mikel's out, right? It seems like he's trending towards out, or is that
I think he listed him as questionable, but okay. I don't think he's supposed to play in this one. And the Georgia obviously has the bye next week for Alabama, so that's the top priority I think right now. But yeah, not too long of a list. And I think Jordan Hall is like potentially could play this week, but we'll see. I think that Georgia defensive line, he definitely wanted to be as deep as possible for that trip to Tuscaloosa. Not that they're overlooking the trip to Lexington by any means. I mean, I might be, but Kirby Smart and the gang aren't.
Kirk Herbstreit is. He's not calling the game tonight. Did you see that? He was tweeting about it like it's the night game, but it's not Herbie. Herbie's not doing that game.
Well, I don't think he does it every time. I mean,
I thought he did the Saturday night games. No matter what.
Like a couple years ago when game day was Georgia, Arkansas, and it was that noon kickoff. Like they were the crew that did game day.
Oh, so I guess he is doing South Carolina LSU at noon.
Yeah, I think he's doing South Carolina LSU.
Okay. It's just kind of weird hearing Herbie during the day. Like he's like Herbie during the day is just a weird experience. Obviously great, and we're going to get bit in the dog, but yeah, it's going to be a little bit weird to transition immediately from game day to Herbie on the call for South Carolina LSU. But we'll get into that.
I still don't understand him on NFL coverage. Like it just, I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me. Get the bag, Herb. I'm not hating on you, Herbie, but it's like he should be talking college football. That's how I feel.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, like you said, I let people do what they want, but I will say, like, it's one of those rare instances where I love Al Michaels and I love Kirk Herbstreit individually calling football games, but together, it doesn't work. Like, together, they don't work. It's just crazy how weird that can be in the booth because those two individually are all-time great broadcasters, and together, it's just not, there's no real chemistry. It's just not great. Well, Matt Green, Tennessee and Kent State did not make our week 3 pick'em this week. But before we get into our week 3 pick'em and projections, sir, how are we doing heading into week 3?
All right, sir. So overall on the season, let's start with the good news. I am 16-9 overall to your 14-11. And then against the spread, however, we are tied on the season so far, 10-14-1 against the spread. So, not where we want to be, but we'll it's a long season. Trust the process. And Zeus with his home dog of the week, he's 1-1 so far this season.
There you go. Well, Matt Green, we'll talk Tennessee here out of the gate. So Tennessee plays at 7:45 at home in the orange breeches, orange tops, for the game against the Golden Flashes, who have not won a FBS game since 2022. This, I think the highest point total in Neyland was 70-7 against UL Monroe a long time ago. I think this game actually has potential to be the biggest win in Tennessee Vols history, just because of how bad Kent State is as a FBS team right now, Matt Green.
Worse than Chattanooga?
Yes. I think Chattanooga would be favored over Kent State.
Oh, is that right?
It's bad. And Chattanooga.
They're FCS. No, or Kent State's FBS, though.
Yes.
So they're better than an FCS team?
No, FCS team's better than the FBS team.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
No, man, it's bad. I think this is one. I mean, obviously, it's a final tune-up, and what's been the talking point here in Vol Country has not been Kent State. It's been this. Have you seen the lines already moved for next week in Norman? Oklahoma has been favored all summer and spring, and Tennessee is now, I think, 2.5-point favorites, road favorites, going to Oklahoma next weekend under the lights. Josh Heupel's return.
The game of the season.
I don't know if it's the game of the season. I think it's a big game. Like, obviously, it's going to be a huge game, but I don't think it's still not the game of the season for me. But it is. I don't know. Because like,
no, I'm just telling. I ain't no guess. It's what it's going to be. I'm telling you, it's going to be an incredible game. It's going to be an insane atmosphere. Oklahoma's first game in the SEC. Heupel going home. Like, I just have a feeling this game's going to be a lot of fun.
I hope so. I also kind of don't, just so I'm not queasy throughout.
Well, yeah, you want to go in there.
I want to blow out. I want LSU 2022. I want LSU 2022. I want
That's
a blowout.
not happening, sir. This is a night game.
Yeah, I don't know. But it does make ball fans feel better that the lines moved and Tennessee is favored because Heupel's done well when he's been the favorite at Tennessee. Not a lot of upsets in the Heupel tenure. It's just a high floor team and the high ceiling now with they're in the football power index, the top 5. The playoff odds continue day by day. Matt Green, Nico Iamaleava named for SEC Freshman of the Week in back-to-back weeks. Jeremiah Thielander and Keenan Peely are 2 of the best run defender linebackers.
Can I get a grinds my gears real quick? I'm really annoyed that Nico's a freshman.
Why?
Because I see he's gonna be like freshman of the week every week, and he's not really a freshman. You know what I mean? It's like,
no, he's a redshirt freshman. That's how it works. It's how it's always worked. What do you mean?
For Alabama had a big game and 2 touchdowns. Like, oh yeah, well Nico's like 4 touchdowns. He's a starter for Tennessee. You know, it's like he's not really a freshman. And also, I think Tennessee should be embarrassed that he's still a freshman. How does this man not play more than 4 games last year? What are we doing?
We're not doing this
I don't know. It just annoyed me week 1 when I saw him like on the awards. I was like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. Because like you want to see who the best freshmen are, you know, like the newcomers to the SEC. So I think it's going to kind of overshadow because he's going to be getting the award every week. It's like Shohei Ohtani existing in Major League Baseball. It's like you don't even remember. Record books aren't even going to remember who played in the American League for a few years. It's like, oh yeah, Ohtani was healthy and playing. Yeah, he's the best player in the league. Give him the MVP.
That's fair. But we're not going to learn a lot from this one. I think Mike Matthews, Parkview alumni, Mike Matthews from my alma mater, Parkview High School, former 5-star true freshman that Matt Green prefers. He wants a true freshman.
Yeah, see, I'd like to have a big 100-yard game. Oh, Mike Matthews, freshman of the week. No, Nico had 300 yards, so obviously he's the, you know what I mean? It'll just for documentation purposes, you know, for statistical purposes. But
this is some real hater stuff.
That's not important at all. But I just thought that when I saw the graphic.
Is this a Nate Frazier thing you've got going on here? Like you want Nate Frazier to get SEC Freshman of the Week because he's a true freshman, or no?
That could be where the hate is stemming from. No, I just forgot about it. I feel like because he's a 2nd-year player and he obviously got on the field. Obviously, there's new rules with the red shirt, or not new, but recent history rules with the freshmen getting to play 4 games. But yeah, it was just one thought I had. It's not that important.
It's just a lot of hating Matt Green.
No hating at all. I still don't know why he didn't play more than 4 games. Like, it's crazy that they preserved his red shirt last year.
I'm not doing this. I can't do this. You're not bringing me down. Tennessee should roll. There's just not a lot to say like in this particular subject matter, Matt Green. I think you're going to see a lot of freshmen. I think you're going to see Tennessee rotate. Nico should not play past the 2nd quarter. I don't even know if he should play the whole first half like he did against Chattanooga. I think we'll get more Peyton Lewis at running back. We'll see some more offensive linemen rotate in, but Mike Matthews and Braylon Staley, the 2 blue chip true freshmen, should get a lot of run here, which should be exciting. I'm very curious to see what Mike Matthews looks like, who has not played in the first 2 games. He has a big opportunity. So does Staley in the slot. We'll see if we see some more freshman corners play and how much they play. Boo Carter at star, another true freshman. Matt Green, blue chipper, Boo Carter, who who's flashed for Tennessee through the first 2 weeks, rotating with Rodney Harrison's son, at the star position for the Vols. But Tennessee should roll 3-0 going into Oklahoma week next week. So savor it this weekend. It's just tough when you have a big game the next week and you just came off a big win and you're just sandwiched. It feels like a bye. Like it's hard to get up for this. You're in it now. Like you just feel good after a game like the NC State win and you just blow the doors off the Wolfpack, and now you're looking like you move into the top 10 in the coaches and AP poll, and there's just all this national respect, and then you're just like, all right, I'm ready for the next big one. I'm ready for the next fun game, and you're just like, nope, that will be next week. We gotta get through this Kent State game. So well, Matt Green, let's change gears to Friday night, Arizona at Kansas State, a top 25 duel between the Wildcats and let me check my notes here, Wildcats, Matt Green. Kansas State favored by 7 at home. What say you?
So this is a really interesting game because it feels like an elimination game, right? I feel like there's a big 4 in the Big 12 right now. I think it's Utah, Oklahoma State, Arizona, and Kansas State. And this feels like it would be an elimination game, except for it's not a conference game. And so
I saw this.
That's just bizarre to me. So they kept this non-conference game on the schedule, even though they're now conference opponents. So I'm really interested to see, because it feels like, at least in our minds, kind of it establishes a pecking order. Because it feels like Arizona is kind of that team that's getting slept on, that might be the most dangerous team in the Big 12 this year. But I feel like I can't go against my gut with the weekday home game. I'm big on the weekday home game. So I feel like Arizona with Fafita and McMillan, I think they're going to put on a show like they always do. I feel like they're a better team on paper, but I think Kansas State's going to find a way to pull it out. So I'm going to take Kansas State to win, but not cover. I'm going to say Kansas State 34-30.
Here's the thing. And Arizona has a lot. This is going to be a fun quarterback battle between Noah Fafita and Avery Johnson. I'm really excited for that. This is a fun just Friday night game. I'm glad this is on Friday night because it gives you an opportunity to kind of only zone in on this game and there's not any competition. So that's cool. So a great quarterback game. I think we're going to see, this is going to have Twitter X, whatever's attention, throughout tomorrow night. And Kansas State, they're 6-1. They were 6-1 last season at home. Their only loss was an upset loss against Iowa State, last season. Brent Brennan, the new head coach coming in from San Jose State, he is 0-3 all time as a head coach against ranked teams. He was 8-29 on the road as a whole at San Jose State. I like Brent Brennan, but the jury is still out on how I think he's going to do at Arizona. I think it's still a step down from what Jed Fish was building there. I don't think it's going to fall off. I think they're still going to be fun offensively. I'm still 50-50 on if this is going to be a long-term marriage that works. I mean, Kenny Dillingham now 3-0, another big win over Texas State, G5 contender tonight. Arizona State looks really good. Beat Mississippi State, SEC school.
Is that a good win?
Yeah, Texas State was right there in the driver's seat for the playoff. If you were looking, I think Bud Elliott had them in, or somebody I saw.
I think it was a 1-point spread or something like that.
Yeah, Texas State's good. GJ Kinney, they're doing a good job. The Bobcats down there, so they're still in that conversation of being the G5 repping the CFP. I forgot who had them in this week. Maybe it was Andy Staples. I don't remember. But either way, they're in the conversation to this point. So it's a good one. And I don't know. I need to see it. This would be a huge win if he was able to pull this off. But Kansas State, just another high floor team that protects home field really well. I just have my doubts. I know you love the Friday night weirdness potential here, and I think this is going to be close, but I don't think Arizona and Brent Brennan's just going to have to prove to me he can win these kind of big games on the road, and also just beating ranked teams as a head coach. And he's playing up, and he struggled against them at San Jose State. He's got a lot more talent at Arizona. Not saying it can't be done. I just need to see Brent Brennan thrive at Arizona for a little bit before I'm picking him to win these ranked games and big games, especially on the road. So give me Kansas State, but I do think Arizona covers. I think this is like a 27-24 type game, and it's just a lot of fun. So give me Give me the Kansas State Wildcats to win, but Arizona to cover.
We agree there, sir.
Bama at Wisconsin, the Badgers, 16-point home dog, sir. What say you?
So this feels like the game everyone's going to overthink. So last year, I kept comparing the last week's game with Alabama, with Texas and Michigan. I was comparing that with last year's Alabama and Texas game. After Alabama lost that Texas game, they bounced back, or after that South Florida game. Sorry, forget everything I just said. South Florida, Alabama a year ago. I got turned around in my thoughts. After they had that terrible showing versus South Florida a year ago, everyone was picking Ole Miss the next week, or not everyone, but there was a trendy pick to pick Ole Miss to beat Alabama a year ago, and then the Crimson Tide came out and took care of business. I think this feels like the kind of game that everyone's going to overthink and see Wisconsin, see what Alabama did versus South Florida last week. And I think Alabama's going to come out and just shut down Wisconsin offensively. This team's, where they scored 27 against South Dakota, 28 versus Western Michigan. Like, this offense has not looked very impressive. We know what Tyler Van Dyke is, I feel like, at this point in his career, although he's an up and down guy. So it's hard to know what he is week in and week out. But I just think this is going to be one where a lot of people are seeing that big spread and how bad Alabama's offense looked for 3.5 quarters and take Wisconsin to cover. I think Alabama's going to dominate. So I'm going to take Alabama to win and cover. I think it's going to be like 27-7, 27-10. I'll say 27-10, and Alabama covers the spread.
Interesting. I think it's going to be worse than that, Matt Green. I understand that. I think this is, going to be are we ready to start a dialogue about Luke Fickell at Wisconsin game? We got into Paul Chryst. Like, it eventually, like, the Graham Mertz thing just broke every Wisconsin fan's brain because, he was the most hyped Wisconsin recruit quarterback in a long time, and that still didn't work, and obviously that went up in flames in Madison. I never understood the Longo hire as his OC. Like, he went very different than what he was doing at Cincinnati. That won him a lot of football games at Cincinnati. He's shown he can do it. Longtime coach. I'm still pro Luke Fickell. I just think how this has all gone to this point is really strange. I think Wisconsin, like the way people talk about Michigan, I think Wisconsin's a worse version than that. Tyler Van Dyke is not a good quarterback in 2024. I think people need to look at Wisconsin being worse than Michigan. They're right now worse than Michigan at explosive plays through 2 weeks, and we saw what Michigan looked like at home last week. Fickell is 10-6 overall to this point at Wisconsin. They beat Western Michigan 28-14 2 weeks ago, 28-13 against South Dakota, not South Dakota State, just South Dakota. This offense still isn't humming, and I thought that was the whole point of moving on from Chryst and changing the era and not just doing the Braylon Allen, Ron Dane, Monty Ball, all that kind of stuff. We're changing up our identity. We're going to change. We're going to swing big, this, that, and the other. None of that's happening. And I also just don't think that was the right idea. I think you could have just moved on from, I don't understand why Luke Fickell is going down this air raid type role, and didn't address quarterback really, because I think Tyler Van Dyke is not the answer there. Tanner Mordecai, I think, was a better option last year, and that obviously went up in flames. So I don't really know. You haven't gotten quarterback right now in back-to-back seasons. It's not like you're winning to this point. You could have just, I guess, hired Jim Leonhard, who you knew what you had there as an elite defensive mind, and just let him take over full-time. That could have been something, The Kirby Smart, like the former defensive player who's also an elite defensive coordinator, that's done pretty well at a lot of stops when they coach at their alma mater and that sort of thing. But I think Wisconsin's getting this weird still benefit of the doubt where I'm looking around, and the more you watch Wisconsin, the more you study them, you're like, this is just not going well, and no one's really talking about it yet. And I think this is the game where they start talking about it, because I think Bama's going to blow the doors off Wisconsin on Saturday. I think this is going to be ugly. I think this early kick, 11 a.m. kick for Bama, I think they're not going to struggle like they did last week against South Florida. I think they win. Give me Bama 38, Wisconsin 10. I think they're going to stomp Wisconsin, and it's going to be one of those after the game where Tyler Van Dyke has like 3 picks in this one. Bama's defense swarms and has their best day through 3 weeks. Jalen Milroe has a good day.
I'm feeling a defensive touchdown.
Yeah, and we start having the conversation of what exactly is going on at Wisconsin, because this is not going well, this experiment with Luke Fickell through 2 years.
We agree again, sir.
So that's not an overreaction, right? To just be like, Wisconsin's a quiet, just mess. They're getting the benefit of the doubt. No one's paying attention, but they're struggling, and this has not gone well.
Year 2, though.
Yeah.
Of Fickell, so it's still early, and this hasn't happened yet, so we'll see.
He didn't take over a bad program.
He
didn't take over a dumpster fire where there was a bunch of issues and everything else. It was kind of a ready-made. I think that was part of the appeal. I don't know. I'm surprised it has not gone well for Luke Fickell.
It's hard to say it was ready-made. Wisconsin, it's like they've had good seasons, but it's like they fired the previous guy. He was good, not
just
great.
Won 10 games last year.
He won 10 games in his. Wait, we're talking about Wisconsin.
Yeah, no, I'm saying Iowa just won 10 games. What I'm saying is it's not like the schedule and the issues at Wisconsin and the talent that he had there. He could not have walk into I don't think it's crazy to have immediate 9-3, 10-2 expectations at Wisconsin. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too...
I mean, they won 10-win season in the last 5 years of Paul Chryst. They were fine, but it's even when they were good, it's not like they were ever dominant. They felt like an overachiever every time they were got to the top 5, top 10. They seemed like someone who kind of consistently overachieved, if that makes sense. But
okay. Since 2005, they've won at least 10 games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 times in the last. So every other year, basically.
But that wasn't what Luke Fickell immediately inherited. Yeah,
right.
the Bielema and Alvarez years were really good. In the early
Jim Leonard went 4-3 in the second half of after they fired Paul Chryst.
Yeah, I mean that's
Paul Chryst went 9-4 that previous year, 2021. He went 10-4 in 2019. He went 13 and Paul Chryst first year.
Fired.
Gary Anderson went 10-3. They fired him in 2014. And then the first year for Paul Chryst, 10-3. Second year, 11-3. Third year, 13-1. Fifth year, 10-4. Seventh year, 9-4. We have this idea of what Paul Chryst was. Paul Chryst has been a better coach at Wisconsin than Luke Fickell has. Luke Fickell hasn't even been as good as Brett Bielema. Brett Bielema went 7-6 in year, or 9-4, or hold on, sorry, 12-1 in year 1, 9-4, 7-6, 10-3, 11-2, 11-3, 8-5. He got fired for 8-4, 8-5. What are we doing?
But it's like Mark Richt. Mark Richt didn't get fired for his first 8 years at Georgia. He got fired for the last.
Also, I don't think he got fired. I think he left for Arkansas, right? Didn't Bielema just leave for Arkansas?
Oh, Bielema left. Yeah. But Paul Chryst just got fired. So
he should have gotten fired though. If this is what you're getting,
you're firing.
I don't know, man.
For his last 4 years.
I don't know. I think the Paul Chryst may have been an overreaction.
Fickell's 2-0 right now, year 2. If he beats Alabama, there's a whole different narrative.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just
I don't see it happening, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't see it either. LSU at South Carolina. The Gamecocks are 7-point home dogs. Matt Green, what say you?
The 7 points honestly shocked me. I know they're at home, but I think this is still early in the season where we don't know who's who, right? You see, oh, they lost to them, oh, but they beat them, so we're still feeling these teams out. But with what South Carolina has been so far, they're winning the turnover battle 6-2 through the first two games. And I think most people would assume that was the first thing I did when you saw the final score of South Carolina, Kentucky. You're like, well, they had to have just killed it in the turnover margin, and they won the turnover battle 2-1. They had they first forced 4 turnovers in the Old Dominion game that they won by 4 points. This team, I just don't see South Carolina as legit at all. Maybe Kentucky ran into a buzzsaw and South Carolina is one of the best teams in the SEC, right? But I think that's highly unlikely. I think Kentucky is bad, and I think South Carolina, you know, that they just ran away with that game. Not to poo-poo their good performance last Saturday, but I think LSU is a significantly better team, and I think LSU is going to kind of run away with this game. I think LSU by like 3 scores. I'm going to say LSU like 34-17. Like, I don't think this game's going to feel very close. Like, I don't see them stopping this passing attack. And especially if they get down 14-0, 10-0, like, I just do not trust the quarterback play for South Carolina to get it done.
Yeah, this is a weird one because South Carolina coming off a huge win on the road. They get to come back. I think obviously they're a better team at home. The home stadium's going to be rocking for this one. Game day's there. This one I think is going to be weird. Brian Kelly openly talking about like his quarterback got outplayed or whatever by the other court. Like, there's some weird vibes still with this LSU team going into this week. Still kind of wait and see mode with them. I don't know if they're going to be able to run the ball in this one. And really, I think they probably might struggle the rest of the way. But like, this is a good matchup for LSU. That's the problem. Like, part of the reason I picked South Carolina win last week and cover, Dylan Stewart and this South Carolina defensive line is legit. They're one of PFF's best defensive lines in the country. It's legitimately great. Like, this defensive line has a lot of talent and is a scary one. The problem is LSU has 2 NFL first-round tackles. The problem is LSU is a bad matchup, and that offensive line is a bad matchup for what South Carolina is good at. And Kentucky has one of the worst offensive lines, not only in the conference, but in the country. So it was great. Like, it was just a recipe for disaster. Brock Vandagriff bench. Like, it was just a disaster for Kentucky. I don't see that being the case for LSU in this one. I think the problem that South Carolina is going to run into with this game in particular is LSU is just going to score. I think there's just something about this game where I think LSU is going to put up points. South Carolina is 73rd in explosive plays to this point. LSU has not really broken a sweat in this rivalry. They're 19-2 all time against South Carolina. The last time South Carolina won, and it was only once in our lifetime, Matt Green, was in 1994. So it would be pretty unprecedented for them to pull this off. I think Lenora Sellers is a little bit better than I thought he was going to be. I said he's got some Josh Dobbs to him. Like, there is some Dobbs stuff to Sellers, but he's just like, I don't think this offense has a lot of juice. I don't think this offense has a lot of juice, Matt Green. So I think they're just not going to be able to get home and dominate the trenches like they did last week. They're going to lose that battle against this LSU team, and I think LSU is going to win comfortably like you. I think LSU wins 34-20 in this one, and I think maybe it's close at the half, but I think LSU wears out South Carolina. I'd maybe feel a little bit differently if this is at night, but noon kickoff and all that, I don't know, and just the history, and I think I'm going to take LSU's offensive line against South Carolina's defensive line.
This is to take a quote from Chase Thomas. This is sneaky big game. This is a sneaky big game for Brian Kelly. Like, if they
nothing
were
to lose for South Carolina. If you win this, you're Beamer. You're golden for the rest of the year. This is like, if you beat Kentucky on the road and then win this one, there's nothing for Beamer.
Beamer's all vibes. He's an all vibes kind of guy. So you get a rivalry win. You get some things like that. You go to a bowl game. Then you look up at the end of the year, everyone's happy. Like, if this, like what we were talking about, the way Brian Kelly was talking about his team after that USC loss and kind of throwing his quarterback under the bus a little bit, like, if they were to lose to South Carolina, it feels like the type of team that the wheels could fall off of. Like, and we know the schedule is going to get even more difficult. So it's a sneaky, huge game, but I tend to think they right the ship, but I've been in Brian Kelly's, camp the whole way. So we'll see if anything happens. But I mean, this big game atmosphere, it might, even though South Carolina's not a great team, it might make LSU fans, just feel a little better to see your team win a big game. But if they lose, we'll see how they're feeling.
Absolutely. Memphis at Florida State. The Noles are 6.5 point home favorites here, Matt Green.
I was a little surprised by this number, to be honest. I think So Florida State was basically just bullied on the defensive line by Georgia Tech and Boston College. Last week, who did Memphis play? They played one of these small schools like, oh man, I was just looking at it. They had like 49 yards rushing. I think it was Western Carolina or someone. I can't remember.
Troy.
But was that week 1 or week 2?
Troy was week 2. Week 1 was North Alabama.
Okay, I think it was the North Alabama game. One of their 2 games, they had like 50 yards rushing in, averaging like 2 yards a carry. I thought that was a little interesting because like that's how Florida State's been kind of, beaten in the first 2 games, just the other team kind of possessing the ball and dominating on the ground. And obviously last week, I'm blanking on the is it Castellanos for Boston College?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the plays he can make on the ground with his legs, like that's a game changer. But I think Memphis was my pick as the college football playoff team from the G5. And I think this game was like arguably winnable before the season started. I mean, and now looking what Florida State is, I think I got to pick against them again. So I'm going to go Memphis wins this one outright. I'm going to say 27-21. And didn't Norvell get an extension like right before the season started or something? They might be questioning that right now if they fall to 0-3.
Yes, he got his contract jumped from $5.5 million in 2023 to $9.8 this season. Yeah, but here's the thing, if you look at how they're recruiting, like they don't have a bunch of numbers in this class, but they have almost exclusively blue chippers. Like he's not really like it's only 4 and 5 stars that they're in on, but it's like a 12, 13 or something. I'd have to go back and pull it up, but part of the issue, I mean, you just went 13-0. Like you just ran the gambit.
13-1, sir.
Well, I'm talking about like after the bowl games are exhibitions. Like we just don't.
No, they went 13-1. I'm not gonna get this narrative. They act like they played a 13 game season. They played 14 games last year.
Sure,
and
kick
one of
them while
they
they're
lost
down.
by 60 points.
Kick them while they're down, Matt Green. But I would say, here's the other part of this that Norvell came from Memphis, right? So this is a kind of important game. Like before the year, like the timing of this is awful.
Yeah.
Memphis is a G5 legitimate playoff contender. Old Vol, Elijah Herring's done really well there. They have a multi-year starter at quarterback in Seth Hennigan. They have college football playoff aspirations. Here's the other part of it. Memphis is better than Georgia Tech and Boston College. That is something else we're learning. Is Georgia Tech a little overrated? Also, Boston College, we'll find out as I talk about in a later pick here, a little overrated because that Florida State win was not as impressive as it looked at the time because Florida State is a lot worse than we thought they were coming into this season. So, Memphis coming into Florida State, where we talked about the atmosphere, the vibes are all-time bad right now in Tallahassee. Season's over. You have nothing to play for. This is a terrible situation to a team that has college football playoff aspirations. Boise had a good Oregon team on the ropes on the road this weekend. Oregon has college football playoff. They had all the pressure on them. There is no pressure on Memphis to come in here because they are looking great. Like they feel like, hey, Florida State, like they're 0-2. Like what's the situation here? Like this is over. Do they stick with TJU in this one? I don't know. It's only 10-7-1 all time in this series. I wonder if we finally see Brock Glenn, the former 4-star, and do they go to the 4-star freshman Luke Cromenhook, who's a top 10 player in his class? Can you really keep running it back with DJU? I mean, this is an all-time low here, Matt Green. I saw this from an article in 2021. So this was something I found from, because I was trying to think of when the last time they started 0-3 was, because I feel like it doesn't happen that often, but they did in 2021.
They did it 3 years ago.
But here's the thing, I bring that up. Outside of 2021, and they lost to Wake Forest 35-14 for that third loss. That was the first time that's happened since 1976. So it doesn't happen very often at Florida State. Like this is uncharted waters to start 0-3 really. It'd be twice in our lifetime for that to happen. But
twice in the last 4 years is a trend, though.
I just think this is one of those where the difference where I thought Boise and App State had a good chance of covering, not winning at Clemson and Boise State and Oregon last week. I think Memphis is just better than Florida State this year. I think Memphis is coming in at a great time. This is a terrible time for Florida State. I think Memphis just wins this game straight up. Like 6.5 is low for this kind of game. And this, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I think Florida State's starting 0-3 again, Matt Green. I think Memphis is just winning this game outright. So give me the Tigers like 28, Florida State 24. Maybe I think it's going to be close, but I think Memphis just wins this game outright and is in the driver's seat for the G5 bid in the 2024-2025 college football playoff, Matt Green.
One thing to watch for is does Memphis get the Florida State bump? We've gotten 2 weeks in a row that the team who beats Florida State jumps into the top 25. Memphis is sitting there right outside. Do they get the Florida State bump after Georgia Tech and Boston College? We'll see.
All right. Next up, Boston College at Mizzou. Mizzou 16-point home favorites. What say you, Matt Green?
Well, they made Eli Drinkowitz eat his words a couple years ago. He was really he was talking that ish, as the kids say, about Boston College, and then they lost a couple years. Was that 2022? I want to say. I really don't. So Missouri's outscored their opponents 89-0 through the first 2 games this season. I think Luther Burden is, one of the best players in college football, if not the best wide receiver in college football, though Kyron Lacey is starting to change my mind. I just don't know what this team is really so far through 2 games because they haven't played anybody. So we know what they're supposed to be, but I also I was never one of the people that was really high on Missouri coming into 2024. I was kind of feeling like they peaked a year ago. So I'm really curious to what they do like when they start playing legitimate competition. Like you've seen in the last few years, like they haven't really taken care of business. Like they haven't played in many of these. Like they're kind of like we've talked about. Kentucky doesn't really load up that non-conference schedule, and they don't even have a locked rival. So they've sometimes gotten 4 easy games in the non-con, and then we've seen this game like they lost to Boston College a couple years ago. They got blasted by Kansas State a couple years ago. Beat them with a 60-yard field goal last year. So they haven't really cruised in any of these non-conference games. I think Missouri wins, but I just can't take them by 16. That feels way too high to me. I think Boston College is not a terrible team. And I think this is like a game for 3 quarters, and then Missouri, maybe wins by 2 touchdowns. But I think it's going to be, a fairly close game. I don't see Missouri just blowing them out. So I'm going to take Missouri to win this one, like 37. I'm going to say 37-24.
Interesting. I disagree, Matt Green. I think Mizzou is a top 10 team. They are pushing for the playoff. They have the schedule to get to the playoff. I think we're going to see part 2 here, where Kyle McCord diced up the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets following the Jackets' big win over Florida State and Ireland. And I think what you're going to see is something similar. Where Boston College, solid win against Florida State, I think. Bill O'Brien's got them moving in the right direction. They still got a long way to go. And this Mizzou team has college football playoff implications. They're top 10 in FPI. They're top 10 in SP+. Like every stat you look at with them, Brady Cook, Luther Burden and company, I just think they're going to actually make a statement because they haven't really had a statement win through 2 weeks. They've taken care of business, but they haven't really stepped on anyone's throat to this point. And I think Mizzou does it here. I think this one, like you said, it happened before with the BC Mizzou thing. I don't think lightning strikes twice on that one. My gut is BC gets blown out in this game, and it's bad. Like, I think people are going to talk. This is going to be a sneaky game you're going to see for the next day or two, Matt Green, where everyone's like, ooh, BC, Mizzou, I don't know. And then we're going to see on the ticker because no one, like, I have other games to watch here. Like, it's not going to get my priority attention on Saturday. You're going to see that it's like 35-7 Mizzou midway through the 3rd quarter, and people are going to be like, oh, right, BC is actually they probably aren't even making a bowl game, and Mizzou's going to make the college football playoffs. So it's a little bit different when these two meet. I don't think it's going to be the same situation as Florida State BC. So give me Mizzou 42, BC 17.
All right, put it on the board. That's our first disagreement at all. Just me having Boston College cover the spread.
Well, I don't know if you've seen the slate coming down the pike here. We're going to be disagreeing a lot because the games that we
Uh-oh.
like are on the docket here over the next, it's just going to be wild. Oregon at Oregon State, the Beavers, 16.5-point home dogs. Is this Zeus's home dog of the week, Matt Green?
Home dog of the week. It is not, sir. The Beavers 16.5. Obviously, I'm not high on the Ducks right now, sir. We were talking about them earlier this week. Just I don't think they're one of the, truly elite teams in college football. But with that said, I think they're still better than Oregon State. These teams are 2-2 in the last 4. I think Oregon State's definitely the one with a chip on their shoulder. And obviously, like you said, they're at home. But Oregon's better than Oregon State. Like, they're going to take care of business. Obviously, this Oregon State defense pitched a shutout a week ago against San Diego State. So, that was a good performance. But in general, I just trust Oregon more. So I think it's going to be close. So I'll take Oregon State to cover that 16.5-point spread. But give me Oregon to win this one, like 30-21.
Wow. Have we been watching the same Oregon, Matt Green? Oregon has problems. Oregon State's defense is good. Where are these lines coming from? Like, this is a road game for Oregon. When is Vegas going to catch up to the Ducks?
I didn't take Oregon to cover, though.
I mean, I get what you're saying, but I'm just saying, like, Oregon, the offense has problems. I don't think this is going to be high scoring at all. I think what you're going to see here, again, is anyone, like, these lines are just crazy. This was the one that just blew my mind. 16.5 on the road in the Civil War where the home teams won the last 4 games. I don't like this. I don't care that they're not in the Pac-12 anymore. You're not going to see that really come out. I mean, I understand Jonathan Smith's not the head coach anymore, but his DC from a year ago has taken over and solid through 2 weeks. Big win over San Diego State last week. This just is weird. Oregon, 94th, Matt Green, in explosive plays in FBS through 2 weeks. The offensive line has problems. Dylan Gabriel has not been the Heisman type guy that many expected him to be, a plug and play guy. I just wonder if that's coming. Like, I think they were on the ropes, obviously, against Boise State last week. They struggled against Idaho. Now this is your toughest game to this point because I think Oregon State's still better than Boise, and this is a home game for Oregon State. I wouldn't be surprised if Oregon State just won this game outright, but I'm not going to do that. I think Oregon's going to find a way, but I think this is going to be like 2017 Oregon, like maybe a last-second field goal. But I think this comes down to the wire once again. But I would not be surprised with the home teams doing really well in this series of late and all the problems with Oregon on the offensive line and just their lack of explosive plays on offense. I think they have real issues. So, I mean, just go ahead and punt the Big Ten title games. Like, they're Penn State, Ohio State, they're rolling. I think Oregon's just got real problems in the Big Ten. USC's rolling. USC's better team than Oregon right now. I think Oregon has just real problems. Not like the sky is falling FSU problems, but I just don't think they're one of the elite teams in college football and in that tier with Texas and all the other, and Georgia and all the other big dogs. I just don't think that's coming. So give me Oregon State 20, Oregon 17. But I would not be surprised if Oregon loses this game outright.
That's probably the strangest phenomenon of all. Like, we didn't even talk about that when we were talking about Oregon kind of being anointed into this elite class before they really earned it. Is USC is just kind of being forgotten about. And I wouldn't be surprised if USC turns out to be a better team. Oh, I would have been surprised in the preseason, but right now I won't be surprised if USC turns out to be better than Oregon this year. So yeah, it's interesting. I feel like we agree, but for you just much more adamantly about negatively on Oregon.
Absolutely. Win some money. Bet against Oregon right now. A&M at Florida. Probably the toughest game on the pick'em this week, Matt Green. Florida 3.5-point home dogs. What say you?
Yeah, I'm with you. This is where it comes out. Like, who are these teams? This early in the season. Like, is Miami a average, not average ACC team, but are they just an average top 25 team that's just pretty good that absolutely beat the brakes off Florida, or are they one of the national title contenders right now? Like, is Notre Dame this they look like a good team when they played A&M, and then they look terrible playing Northern Illinois. So is A&M that awful, or did Notre Dame just have a terrible week? It's really hard to judge what these teams are right now. I just think surely, and not to call you Shirley, but surely Florida's not going to go winless, right? Like, this is another big game in the swamp. Like, even my friend who's a big Florida fan said, like, it's still early in the year. We still have hope. So, like, it's still going to be a rowdy atmosphere. They could turn on them quick if they get down 2 scores in the second quarter or something. But I don't know. After watching Connor Wegman against Notre Dame in that season opener, and now kind of seeing what Notre Dame is like, not that the defense played poorly against Northern Illinois, but I think I'm talking myself into the Gators. And I think I'm going to make this my home dog of the week. I think at home, Billy Napier, Florida, they need this so bad. If they lose this game, he might not make it through October, honestly. Like, we've all said, 5-7 with his schedule. I mean, there's a conversation to be like, they're ready to fire this man after 1 week. Like, it doesn't even matter. Like, it's crazy how quick they've turned on him. But if they can find a way to win this game, maybe he can extend, this. Maybe this is DJ Lagway's coming out party. A lot of maybes I'm throwing at you. Florida, Napier did beat A&M in College Station back in 2022. One of his few good SEC wins. But I think Florida finds a way at home. Home dog of the week. Give me the Gators, 23-20.
Wow. We're going to disagree outright, Matt Green. Make up some ground.
All right.
Florida's bad, and I think people are just looking at Samford as, like, obviously DJ Lagway.
Is A&M good?
A&M's good. So Notre Dame played a great game. Week 1 can just be really weird. Like, A&M, everything went wrong at home. The offense struggled. They dropped 52 on McNeese State. That also is a nothing burger, but they looked a lot better there. I also need to point something out here about A&M, and I wonder if people are going to be ready for this, Matt Green. So have you looked at their schedule past Florida? So the Notre Dame lost. It's non-conference, so doesn't hurt them in the grand scheme of things. You get Bowling Green next week, Arkansas at home, Mizzou at home, at Mississippi State, LSU at home, at South Carolina, New Mexico State at home, at Auburn, who's awful, and then Texas at home to wrap up the season. A&M is still very much in the SEC title opportunity conversation. I'm looking at this and I'm like, A&M's going to be favored in a lot of these games down the stretch. If they can survive Gainesville, if they can get out of there with a win, if Mike Elko can get his guys out of Gainesville with a victory, they're kind of in the driver's seat to be looking at 9-3, 10-2, 11-1 type deal. I'm not saying it's going to happen.
I mean, you just called Missouri a college football playoff
I'm not.
team.
I know. What I'm saying is, like, that's a tough game for Mizzou to still go into College Station. Like you saw, it wasn't easy for Notre Dame to win there. Like, College Station is a tough place to play, and Mike Elko is still.
But is Notre Dame a bad team?
I just think Notre Dame that's a totally different thing. Like, Freeman's done this against Purdue, he's done it against Marshall, whatever. Like, it just, I don't know. Notre Dame could still finish 11-1, and it wouldn't surprise me. All that being said, what I'm saying here is Florida's bad, and we're all just kind of like the dual quarterback thing with Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway. Like, I don't think that's going to go well. Like, I think I would be more bullish on Florida if they started DJ Lagway just outright. Like, hey, it's good. Like, do the Trevor Lawrence thing where you saw it and you're like, clearly there's something different about Lagway versus Mertz. Clearly there was something different between Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence. And you just make that change.
Yeah, but Kelly Bryant was like really bad. Graham Mertz was at least like solid last
Kelly
year.
Bryant won double-digit games, I think, as a starter at Clemson.
Yeah, but
because
of the roster, Kelly Bryant was not good. He was not a good player.
I've
had so many conversations
that next year. All right, he's fine.
So
it doesn't matter.
So many arguments for the Jake Fromm.
It's not a big difference between Graham Mertz
stuff.
and Kelly Bryant. What are we doing? Like, it's not a huge difference. Like, they're both fine.
Kelly Bryant it's kind of garbage though. You saw Graham Mertz stats a year ago.
This is revisionist history. Kelly Bryant was not bad. He's okay. He just wasn't bad. He immediately started an SEC school right after that.
Like 9 touchdowns.
Get out of here. This is ridiculous. You're not doing this to Kelly Bryant. All that being said, Florida is just, they can't get out of their own way. Just start DJ Lagway. They lost their lone home matchup against Texas A&M in the series. There's not a lot of history here. I just think Mike Elko is going to survive this one. I don't think he's going to lose to two teams early in Notre Dame and Florida. I think Florida is just, they're trending in the wrong direction. I think A&M survives here in a silly game. I mean, Florida got blown out by Miami at home. I don't think the home field matters. It's not a night game. It's 3:30. Give me A&M.
Prime time in the SEC, sir.
Give me A&M 27, Florida 17. I think A&M wins and covers. I think we need to recalibrate and just be like, yeah, this Florida team's just bad and going to lose a lot of games this year.
But you think Miami is legit, right?
Like, I do think Miami's legit.
I don't know that there's any shame in getting blown out by Miami.
Well, you got blown out at home. I don't think A&M's going to blow you out. Like, I think Miami blew you out. I don't think A&M's going to blow you out. I just think A&M's going to win comfortably.
You think Florida will probably find a way to lose under Billy Napier. Also, Kelly Bryant, 2017, 13 touchdowns and 8 picks. That's all I'm saying. He was mediocre.
Oh my God. Anyway, West Virginia at Pitt. Pitt 1.5 point home dogs. This used to be such a big game. Pittsburgh and West Virginia.
Used to be, sir. The backyard brawl is always a massive game.
Well, what say you, Matt Green?
I say eat shit, Pitt. That's what I say, sir. Mountaineers all the way. You know Mountaineers. That's my like second, third team. I don't know. They're up there. I've spoken at length about the bar we went to for this game. Was that last year or 2 years ago?
Oh, at Aubrey's.
But yeah, good times. I think West Virginia. I just think they're a better team with Garrett Green and this rushing attack. It is on the road, but I want to say they won. Did they win a couple years ago when Pitt played Tennessee? Did Pitt win that game the week before? Yeah, because that was when JT Daniels was there. He threw the pick late in that game. So Pitt did win the last one at home.
Yes.
But I'm taking West Virginia to win this one.
We disagree again here, Matt Green.
Well, I'm going to say 26-23. That's my score.
Okay. I think Pitt wins. And folks, Pitt hired, I think he was the Western Carolina offensive coordinator. So Pat Narduzzi's had like 97. Mark Whipple was the best when they went to the ACC title game with Kenny Pickett and company. Cade Bell, he set all kinds of records where he came from. Where did he come from? Let me pull this up because Cade Bell, Western Carolina. Yeah, I was right. So they were a top 10 offense. His last year averaged 37.6 points per game. I just don't think people understand that Cade Bell and Pitt has a fun offense. Eli Holstein, the transfer quarterback, former 4-star Alabama kid, is the quarterback. They had an unbelievable come-from-behind win over Cincinnati, who had that game well in advance, winning by multiple scores. Scott Satterfield chokes it away to the Pitt Panthers. Pitt's going to win this game, Matt Green. I think Pitt's just going to – I think people have just kind of overlooked, and I understand why. Pitt does this, though. Been to an ACC title game. Pat Narduzzi always finds a way to get the most out of this roster somehow. There's a lot of Pitt magic in the ACC. And then you look at the rest of the schedule. Youngstown State at home, at UNC, Cal at home, Syracuse at home, at SMU, who's terrible, Virginia at home, Clemson at home, at Louisville, at Boston College. Pitt looks like a 10-2 team. I think we just all discounted that Pitt would not be in this conversation. So, like, as I'm bringing awareness to Texas A&M having a different record than you might think by the end of the year because of some early stumbles, I think the Pitt Panthers need to be on ACC championship game watch, because if they can win this game, they get a lot of coin flip games at home, like at Cal at home, Syracuse at home, Clemson at home. Like this Pitt team, Matt Green, they blew out Kent State. They come back against Cincinnati, like I said. I like this Cade Bell. I like the offense. It kind of reminds me of the Whipple year where you bring in Pat Narduzzi's like, I'm going to go bring in an offensive whiz and we're just going to turn this thing up and see what happens for a year. I don't know if it lasts. I'm buying all the Pitt Panther juice. I'm all in on the Pitt Panthers this year. Like, go ahead and like sign me up. I think they win this game outright. West Virginia has real problems. Just a lot of you say you're you know what, Pitt. I say to you, Pitt forever. The Pittsburgh Panthers are winning this football game in the backyard brawl. So give me Pitt 38. Give me Pitt 38, West Virginia 24.
Oh, wow. I think we should all try to find someone who looks at us the way that Chase Thomas looks at these mediocre to good Power 5 schools. Like everyone's going 10-2 or 11-1 when you look at that schedule laid out, sir. Pitt could be good, but I don't see anyone in the ACC going 11-1.
Hey, you doubt the Pitt Panthers at your own discretion, Matt Green.
Hey, they do have that ACC title on their in their trophy case. Not many teams can say that in the past.
Miami can't. Everyone's penciling in the Hurricanes.
Yeah,
but don't overlook my Pitt Panthers, Matt Green. Tony Dorsett forever. Notre Dame at Purdue.
We're still salty about Pitt down here for that. I forget the years. 82 Sugar Bowl.
Yeah. Notre Dame at Purdue 9.5. Home dogs for the Purdue Boilermakers. What say you, Matt Green?
So this is a tough one. Coming off the upset, I feel like everyone's down on Notre Dame right now. So I feel like I obviously want to pick against Notre Dame. I think they're going to win this game, but I just don't really know what this offense is. So I don't think I necessarily trust them to cover. Like Riley Leonard, obviously I've changed my tune in about a week and a half on this Notre Dame team. I just don't know what to expect from this offense. So I'll take Notre Dame to win, but I don't know. Give me like 27-20. Give me Purdue to keep it close.
Yeah, I think that's Purdue top 10 passing offense. Hudson Card quietly figuring it out in year 2. At Purdue, the defense has been really good. It's at home. This is not like a enviable spot for Notre Dame. This is something I'm going to have on the corner of my eye. Like they're Purdue's top 20 in passing yards per attempt. They're top 23 in rush defense. I don't know. Like they're top 10 in yards. Purdue is quietly they're feisty. Matt Green. I think this is going to be a sneaky, dangerous game for the Fighting Irish. But like you said, losing to Northern Illinois at home last week in embarrassing fashion. But again, Northern Illinois might be the G5 representative. They're 2-0 and they're a good team. But still no excuse for that to happen in year 3 of the Marcus Freeman era. If you lose this game, if you're Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame, the season's over. Because you could still make the playoff if you're Notre Dame. I know it won't make a lot of people happy, but you're still in the driver's seat to make the playoffs if you go 11-1. So I don't know. I think I'm going to have to pick them. But if I turn over and it's like 38-27 late in the fourth, Purdue, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if you're the same, but I think this Purdue offense has got real juice. And I think they're going to give Notre Dame some problems. So I think Notre Dame's going to have to score some points. And Riley Leonard's banged up still. I don't know. This is a bad matchup. It's one where I just can't see Notre Dame losing to Purdue and Northern Illinois in back-to-back games. But I also really, really want to just pick Purdue, outright. But I'm not going to do it. I'm a coward. I'm going to be mad about it on Sunday in our recap show. I can feel it in my bones, but I just can't do it. I think Purdue keeps it close, though, so I'll allow them to cover. But it's just a cowardly way of me saying I can't pick them to get the upset outright. So give me Notre Dame 28, Purdue 27 or something. Super, super close, but also would not be surprised if Purdue just wins this game outright because I think Purdue's got juice on both sides of the ball.
Also, who's in charge of their schedule to get a bye week in week 2? What are we doing? What are we doing with the bye week in week 2? Let's play Indiana State and have a bye week after. I don't know.
Well, can I also say the stats? What's annoying is the week 0 stuff. I need that out because they're grouped together. The teams who played 3 games already are their stats are different. So it's driving me nuts, and I have to and I try to get rid of them because I'm like, no, you've played 3 games. This doesn't count. Drives me nuts. That's a grind my gears thing. Is not having everyone start the same week drives me nuts in the stat consolidation because I'll have something and I'm like, no, they're not that because this team played 3 games and I've got to move that. It drives me nuts.
See, that's all I'm saying about Nico with the freshman stats. That's all I'm saying. It's I just don't like how it looks visually.
Okay, that was an unnecessary string.
You're right there with me. You're right there. We're not so different, you and me.
Colorado at Colorado State. The best rivalry maybe in college sports right now. Like, this is a must-watch game, Matt Green. Colorado at Colorado State. The Rams 7-point home dogs. What say you?
I mean, isn't every Colorado game a must-watch game at this point? Just to see like what thing's gonna go viral, whether it's something that happens on the field or like this game last year. I mean, this game last year was just an incredible game. Even though, like, I still don't know why it was game day. You wouldn't even know who Colorado was playing as far as college game day was concerned. But we had the DB that took the cheap shot. I mean, I basically call it a cheap shot, right? Like, I feel like it felt excessive. You can call it whatever you want to call it. But yeah, there's some legit bad blood in this rivalry. I feel like Dion was pretty disrespectful to him a year ago. He felt disrespected back. So I don't know. I just watching this offense last week against a legitimate opponent, like, they were just, nowhere to be found. So this is not hate on Colorado State here, but obviously they're not a power conference team. So I expect Colorado to kind of look their best again, like they did against North Dakota State. So I expect this offense to move the ball and Shedeur Sanders to throw for a bunch of yards. But I don't know that they're going to win big. Like, this 7-point spread, it feels like a game they're going to win by 7. It feels like a 35-28 or something. But just because I can't call a push, I guess I'm going to take Colorado. So give me Colorado slightly covers, but I feel like this is going to be a close game because when you don't have a defense, you can't blow anybody out because the opponent just continues to score. So give me Colorado. I'll say 37-28. So it's slight cover.
Yeah, I think both these teams are bad, Matt Green. I think it's like this game's going to be must watch because I think there's just both teams have real problems. This is a coin flip. 7, like, I think people need to understand. So when you're throwing around Colorado as a Big 12 title contender before the year, they're 7-point favorites on the road against a bad Colorado State team. Like, this is basically a coin flip game, and that should not be the case with the top end talent that Colorado has in Shedeur and Travis Hunter and company. And I think this game can go either way. I think Colorado is going to ultimately win, but Colorado State 129th in pass defense. There's like 132 teams total. Like, this is a terrible matchup for Colorado State in that I think Shedeur is going to have a good game. I think he's going to, Travis Hunter, Jimmy Horn, and Will Shepherd and company are going to be able to pass the ball and throw all over the Rams. They haven't been able to run the ball all year with Dallin Hayden and company, and a lot of that's the offensive line, this, that, and the other, but Colorado cannot run the football. That doesn't matter against Colorado State. Here's the problem, though. Colorado is also in the hundreds in pass defense, Matt Green. So they have one of the worst secondaries in the sport. So I think you're going to see a bunch of offense in this game. I think you're going to see a bunch of high scoring back and forth. And I think it's going to go kind of similar to what we saw against North Dakota State in week 1, just at home for Colorado State. Colorado wins, but I think this is going to take every last bit of the Buffs to escape Fort Collins with a victory here over the Rams. So give me Colorado 42, Colorado State 38. I think they ultimately win, but I don't think they cover.
I'm with you. Well, actually, no, we disagree, but I do think it's going to be a back and forth game the whole way.
Georgia at Kentucky. The Wildcats 22.5-point home dogs in the SEC opener for them.
So I feel like there's this narrative I've heard this week that, like, every time like Kentucky plays Georgia tough, like would you agree with that like Kentucky, I don't know, gets in like close games with Georgia?
You don't have. I feel like it's only happened a couple times, right? I think everyone just is it the 2022 game.
So
I feel like that was the only close game.
Happened a couple times. So I was going back and looking in recent years, like back in 2019, that was actually a home game. I think it was like 0-0 going into halftime or something that Georgia ended up winning 21-0. But 14-3 in 2020, 30-13 in 2021, 16-6 in 2022. And then obviously Georgia put up a 50 spot a year ago and just blasted them. But there have been close games. So I think if you're a person who's probably not paying that close attention to Georgia, Kentucky, and maybe just looking at the point spread, Kentucky's probably covering a lot of these spreads. And I remember specifically 2021, it was 30-13. Like Kentucky went on like a 10, 11 minute drive in the fourth quarter to score a touchdown with like 30 seconds left or something like that to cover the spread. So it was like, these games have been close, and I don't have the spread numbers in recent years in front of me. I bet you they're probably like 4-1, 5-1 in the last or recent games against the spread. But none of these games have ever actually been close because Kentucky's offense hasn't done anything against Georgia. Like looking at the 16-6 game, the last time they went to Kentucky in 2022, like Georgia was on the 1 yard line, close to making it 23-0 early in the fourth quarter, and they did get stopped. So they didn't do it. That's a credit to Kentucky. And then Kentucky goes on like a 8-minute touchdown drive, 99 yards, and it makes it 16-6. And so the game kind of looked close at the end, but Georgia's never in jeopardy of losing any of these games to Kentucky because Kentucky can't score any points. And I see that game. And especially the 2021 team, that was the year that was college game day, and Kentucky was top 10. And in 2018, I know it was like for the SEC East when Georgia went to Lexington. And it feels like every time Kentucky's actually good, Georgia just kind of stomps them out early, and it's not a contest. So it feels like the years where they're not as good, maybe and it's hard to say this because that's kind of Kirby Smart's calling card, is that they come ready to play every week. But I think the weather was an issue in 2022, and I think weather could be an issue on Saturday in this one. So maybe it could keep it close again. Kentucky kind of does have a way of mucking it up a little bit, but I think that's why I had to go back and look, because I heard a couple people say this, and I think that's why the vibe exists that Kentucky keeps it close with Georgia, and so they might keep it close, but Georgia's never really in jeopardy of losing any of these games. And I think you've seen with Carson Beck, I think Georgia is just a more dynamic passing offense, just in terms of that 15 to 25 yard window, and like Stetson Bennett probably threw the deep ball a little better than Carson Beck. But just Georgia's passing attack is just a lot more deadly since Carson Beck took over. So I think that's ultimately kind of what separates it, is Georgia's not going to muck it up with Kentucky. Georgia's going to move the ball, and I don't think Kentucky's going to really be able to. So I'm interested. Kentucky's already said they're playing 2 quarterbacks in this one. Probably not a great sign. So I'm going to take Georgia. I mean, Georgia hasn't given up a touchdown in the first 2 games, so it's hard to pick Kentucky, but it's just hard to ever pick anyone to not score a touchdown. So I'm going to take Kentucky, Georgia win this one and cover. I'm going to take Georgia like 38-10.
It's funny, like if this 2 things didn't happen. If 1, this was in Athens, I think we would wonder about this a little bit less. And 2, Kentucky just got embarrassed at home the previous week.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like a gut check game for Stoops and his team, where you kind of got to get up off the mat here, or it could get really ugly. Like you get blown out at home back-to-back weeks by South Carolina and Georgia. Things are looking rough, and this is new territory, because we joked for years that Kentucky has smartly so made their schedule manageable, where they can get to build up those wins and then get the Georgia game undefeated, and it looks like it's going to be a big game, this, that, and the other, and it never ends up being that. But the problem is, so after this game, Kentucky gets Ohio, who's a good MAC team, bowl team, at home. Should still win that, but it'll be close. At Ole Miss, Vanderbilt at home, who is a lot more spicy than they've been, especially offensively, in years. Kentucky then goes to Florida, Auburn at home, at Tennessee, Murray State at home, at Texas, Louisville at home. I don't know. This is it could get rough here for this. I've already talked about on this program where I think this is headed with Stoops, and I still think this is going to be his last year. These press conferences are not helping the long-term outlook for Stoops at Kentucky. I think this has all the makings of an unbelievable Stoops get back up game in some context, where I don't think he's going to get embarrassed back-to-back weeks. I don't think Kentucky is just going to get stomped at home in this way.
But
Georgia's banged up on the defensive line.
Game.
Georgia's, I understand that. I'm not saying it's going to be a right game where they challenge them. I just think Georgia is thinking Bama. They have a bye. They're trying to get through this Kentucky game without any more big-time injuries. My gut is Georgia keeps some stuff in the bag here, and they're saving some stuff, and they don't want to show enough stuff until they get to the Alabama game. That I think they manage. This is more of a managing game for Georgia. Just survive and advance. Like, the game's never in doubt. So I think this game will actually be closer than people think, but it will not feel close. It will never feel like this game will ever be in doubt for Georgia. But I think it's going to be like 31-17 here. 31, yeah, let's just go 31-14. And they still cover.
Two touchdowns this Georgia they're going to score on Georgia?
It might be the defensive line. Kentucky's defensive line has been really great. Like, that's something that is part of it with Walker and company. Like, the Kentucky defensive line, I think, will be solid. I think Kentucky's defense will play pretty well here. My gut is they keep this low scoring. They play keep away a little bit. And this is actually more of a low scoring game, and Georgia doesn't try and just unload everything in their arsenal and just kind of, it's a very boring win that's never in doubt, but somehow you look up and Kentucky covered is my guess. And it looks like Kentucky gave up a bigger fight than they actually did. It's my guess.
And I feel like that's what's happened in Lexington in recent history with Georgia. Like they've been easy wins, but they haven't looked easy on the scoreline. And especially if the weather's an issue, I think Kirby Smart, I think that's definitely something that he's prone to do, that it's like style points don't matter. Once they realize how many points that they know that the other team can't score on them, they just kind of bleed the clock and try to get out of there as healthy as possible.
Yeah. Final one here, the Apple Cup, Matt Green. It feels wrong to do this in mid-September, but it is what it is. And it's also in the Seahawks Stadium, which I learned prepping for this, which is terrible. I don't know why this game is not at UW, but it's at the Seahawks Stadium on Saturday. So Washington favored by 4.5 against the Cougs. What say you?
So this one was tough for me because I still just don't really know what Washington is. And obviously Washington State is, obviously has their question marks as well. But I think I just trust Washington more. So I'm gonna go Washington. Washington State obviously had the big win over Texas Tech a week ago, but I'm gonna go Washington 27-20. I think it'll be a pretty close game, but give me Washington to win and cover.
I think so too. Belichick and company, the defense I think is really good. The offense has been better than I thought it would have been with Will Rogers to this point, but the Cougs just beat a solid Texas Tech team a week prior. Washington, their pass defense has been really good. They're top 20 in offense right now. Mateer, the new quarterback for the Cougs, 312 yards last week. 197 of those, Matt Green, were rushing yards. It broke a Washington State quarterback record to go with his passing yards in that one. 2 touchdowns. He's fun. I think he's the more fun quarterback in this game. So that will be interesting. It would not surprise me if Washington State just wins this outright, but this is still a series dominated by the Huskies, and Huskies I think are more complete than I thought they would be to this point. So I think defense gives Washington State some problems in the Seahawks Stadium. I think they take care of business, but I think this is kind of a boring one. I don't think this is the same kind of juice that the Apple Cup's had in recent years. So give me Washington to win and cover, like something like 28-20.
You just know there's a 19-year-old student in Pullman, Washington somewhere that's like, I don't know, man. All I'm saying is John Mateer, I think our offense actually might be better than with Cameron Ward. I think what he does brings more to the table. Someone's out there.
He ran for almost 200 yards. It's kind of wild that Cam Ward didn't break that record, and immediately Mateer comes in and breaks that record in a second start.
Yeah, leading rusher through the first 2 games. So we'll see.
Well, that's all I've got, Matt Green. Anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
Again? I didn't write that down.
Oh, 28-20 Huskies.
All right, put it on the board.
All right, sir. Anything else you have before we wrap up here tonight?
That's all I got, sir. I just hope the Dogs can get through this bye week. Alabama gets through the bye week, and we have a sexy top 4 matchup in Tuscaloosa in a couple weeks.
That would kind of suck though if Bama didn't take care of business in Wisconsin. I want Bama, Georgia undefeated. Like that's
also College Game Day gets access to these programs. All I'm saying is Nick Saban, these coach at the highest level. They know what teams are running. They run coaching clinics showing their schemes and all kinds of stuff. Nick Saban better not have any sort of insider access to Kirby Smart's program at UGA. I'm sorry. This guy is employed by the University of Alabama. He can't be in the House of Pain and getting that in that indoor practice facility. I keep Saban out of there, sir. We can't have any of that.
There you go. You heard it here from Matt Green. No Saban allowed. Matt Green, always a pleasure, and I will talk to you in a couple days.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.